Everyone has an opinion. Everyone thinks they know what needs to be done. How do we deal with situations? But the tribe of Issachar was different. And today we're going to explore how they were different and why that is so important to you and I. So who was Issachar, and why do I believe this not only has special relevance, importance for you and I, especially today? So we're going to look at two references. The first is in 1 Chronicles 12. Now the context is David is being established as king, and it talks about the tribes that had been drawn to him to help establish him. And it goes through each tribe, and it's very specific. It talks about how many troops they had, and it also, though, talks about special or unique abilities, attributes some of them had, like some that were left-handed, some that could fight with either hand. But we get to verse 32 in Issachar, and it's different, and it's important for you and I. So verse 32, it says, from the tribe of Issachar, 200 leaders and their men who understood the signs of the times, and they knew what Israel needed to do. Now, that's not just a superficial understanding, a recognition of the direction things are going in, but it's actually a much deeper spiritual discernment of what was happening. And again, that very specific understanding of what needed to be done. So let's look at a specific example of that and how that attribute can play out. So Judges chapter 4. Now, this is after God has given his people the promised land, but before the kings are established. And so they're ruled by judges. And they go through this cycle of serving God and drifting away from God. And when they drift away from God, they wind up in oppression, which frankly is the way it always works. When we drift away from God, we slide into oppression before we realize it. And what it says is that of the oppressors, they made life unbearable for Israel. They made life unbearable for God's people. And so they cried out. And so what has God done? He's established a judge named Deborah from the tribe of Issachar. We're going to see how specifically that discernment and understanding can be. Now it says of Deborah that her role was to draw people back to God. And so what happens? She calls a guy named Barak, and the instructions she has for him are incredibly detailed. She calls Barak and she tells him, God has commanded you to raise an army of 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun and take them to Mount Tabor. So very, very specific, but it goes on. And it says, and God says, I will draw the enemy to the Kishon River and you will defeat them there. Very specific. God is showing them through Deborah the discernment of what needs to be done and how to gain the victory. Now, unfortunately, Barak just doesn't have faith, which is a story you can read for yourself. And what does he do? He says to Deborah, I won't go unless you go. Now, again, think about it. God has given specific, detailed instructions of what to do so that you can have the victory. And while we can judge Barak, how often do we know what needs to be done, but we just struggle to take that action? But that's an episode for another day. You can go read the story for yourself in Judges chapter 4. But what do we know? We can discern, or we can take away from it this. God showed specifically in detail how to deal with the situation and how to gain the victory. And Deborah went with Barak, and God did give them the victory. God gave them the freedom they were looking for. That is the kind of understanding of the signs of the times. That's the kind of knowing what needs to be done that frankly we need in the world today. We need people who have that kind of understanding, and in doing so can draw people back to God. That they can draw people out of their oppression and gain the victory for them. So how do we become like the tribe of Issachar? How do we become like that? Well, it's not as hard as it may sound, but it does require us to step out in faith. Now, we know that James chapter 1 tells us that if we desire to have wisdom, that we just ask God and he will give it to us freely. So what do? Well, first, we begin asking for wisdom. Number 2, then we begin to operate. We begin to exercise that wisdom. Part of that is start reading Proverbs. Let God start downloading wisdom and Finally, Jeremiah 33:3, God says, call unto me and I will show you great and mighty things that you know not. So literally, what we need to be doing is we need to be calling on God and asking Him to give us wisdom, to show us, to give us discernment. We need to get out of that rut of being stuck in our day-to-day life, focusing on just the issues in front of us, and go to God and get that download of something greater, something that will gain the victory for people, something that will draw people out of oppression, and something that will draw people back to God.